Hello, I am CrazyCat648, or you can call me Grace. If you hear someone in the background, that is my brother, and he is recording a video. But today I'm going to be building a Overgrown style greenhouse, and I am super excited for it. But first, I need to clean up this terrain. Usually I build on super flat, and everything's kind of perfect. Hello, this is Future Cat. I'm going to be taking over this segment here because I was live streaming this and the sound is a little bit muddled when I was voiceovering this. It was also 2.5 hours long, but here I am just cleaning up the area and making a hill. I made it kind of curve inward. I wanted the greenhouse to sit kind of in the middle of it, and so I made a circular hill shape so the greenhouse would sit in the center and be the focal point. And I just kept adding layers, and I was using World Edit, the Minecraft mod. There was no way I was gonna build this all by hand, because that would take much longer than half an hour. Then they built a divot here in the pathway to give it some visual interest, and I did end up cleaning it up a little bit. I hadn't really tested out many Minecraft mods for this, so it might be a little bit edgy with my mod using. And over here I added a few more layers because I thought the hill was looking a bit flat. Instead of 4 blocks, I made it to like a 6 or 8 blocks tall, and I just kept adding it till I felt it looked right. And I just kept adding more and raising up that portion of the hill, because not all hills are completely circular and uniformly shaped, and so to make it look more natural, I just added a portion of it that was larger and taller than the rest, and I hope I did a good job with it. I did. Now looking back at this recording, I can see there's like a small circular area where it's kind of, I didn't cover up a certain part, but it looks fine. That's just me being buggy. Okay, now here I am starting off with a wireframe of the build. Now I had a couple people on stream wonder what I was doing with this. When I'm wireframing, I am planning out the build, because in the words of a YouTuber I watch, her name is Soju, to fix a wireframe for a build will take 5 minutes rather than a full build, which will probably take you half an hour just to fix one part. And that's the best case scenario. But here I am measuring out the windows. I didn't know exactly what I wanted, and so I was just playing with some numbers and different window sizes. I didn't use a reference image, and I probably should. I probably should have used a reference. But I was just going off of memory of different greenhouses I'd seen in the past, and so I didn't know exactly what I was doing. Here I was just measuring window sizes, and I wanted to make a arch-shaped window because I know many different greenhouses have some kind of arching window design, and I didn't like the length of the windows, and so I cut it down here. I used the purple to measure out the exact length of the blocks, and so I was just cutting down the window and remeasuring it. And see, this is the most tedious part of the build, is this wireframing, but it is a lot easier to do it than just going into a build without planning anything at all. And before most of my builds, I do some kind of like sketch or drawing of it. Here I was figuring out how big I wanted the entrance to be, and I did decide to add a curved part here at the corner. The corners, so because it was looking very boxy, and so I just added this rounded bit, and then I started making archways for the windows, because, like I said before, I know many greenhouses have some kind of archway for their windows, and I added a window box. I'm pretty sure most greenhouses don't have a window box or plants outside the greenhouse, but this is my build. I can do what I want. And so I added greenhouses. I also thought it would look nice from the inside to have more plants. And then I decided to start building the entrance. And then you'll see here, I decided it was too wide. And so I wanted to cut it down, and so I had to move the windows over, the beautiful windows I had made, and I had to move them all over. Imagine having to build this in survival. That would have been a pain. And so I had to bring everything over. See, this is where having a wireframe is very handy, because then I didn't have to move every single part over, because then I would have to move so many different types of blocks, and this time I just have to move a handful of wool blocks. And so I was just fixing the frame, remeasuring out the windows, and I used purple because I didn't know what else block to use. I usually use white and another block, and then the main build is very white, so I use white wool. I started to build the main entrance, and so I just copied the window box designs, but I just made it one block taller, and then I started to build the actual frame of the greenhouse. And so I decided I didn't want to block in the middle there, so I added the ones on the frame outside, and I added those little one block there, so I knew where that line started and ended. And then I'm looking back there to see how the build did. I wanted to add some kind of window there, but when I built it and I stepped back, it looked exactly like a church, and that was not what I was going for. So I ended up getting rid of it, because I wanted this to look like a greenhouse, not a church design. So I got rid of the window, and I did that with the mod world edit, just because I wanted it quick. Then I started building the roof framing, and so I did look at a reference image for this because I didn't know how to make the curve of the roof, but that was the only thing I looked up. I did try to make it even, so I looked back and saw it on the other side, and I just copied the exact same design over. And then for the middle, it was a bit taller, and so I had to fix. So first I copied over the entrance and 2 windows, then I started bringing it towards the center and up, and it was just, it's a lot of like frames and stuff. You have to, I did look at some circle maps before I started this just to make sure I had the curves right. And then I connected the 2 sides to the top. I didn't know exactly how I wanted to do it, and so here I'm going over a couple of different ones. And now the frame of it is done. And so I'm going over, looking and making sure it looks right, and then I got rid of that magenta wool. And then I started doing the block gradient. I had picked diorite, calcite, pale oak planks, some smooth quartz, and snow, and I did get some smooth diorite to break up the diorite. Some people don't like diorite, but when you use it right, it looks absolutely fantastic. And it's just another tool you can use. And I didn't like how I was laying out the calcite, and so I did end up adjusting it a little bit. And I accidentally started placing some smooth quartz when I meant to place pale oak next. Pale oak was the 3rd block in the gradient, and not the 4th one. And so I replaced the wool there with pale oak, and I did end up moving the gradient up just a little bit later when I fixed it. And then I started placing some smooth quartz, and I just kept replacing all the wool framing, and it made it a lot easier. then I started placing some snow. I didn't want to do white concrete because against all these other blocks, it looked very desaturated, untextured gray. But with the blue and the pink in the quartz and snow, it made it look a lot better, and it has like a small amount of texture, which fits the build more. And then here I'm just fixing up the gradients a little, moving some blocks around, and that's pretty much all I do. And then I started adding the framing to it. I added some overhangs to the windows on the side, because I didn't want to have that same round feature at the front to be copied, and I did fix the hill a little bit because it was running a little bit too close to the greenhouse. I didn't want the same round feature to be used on all sides, and so I made it like an overhang with the garden box underneath it. And I did fix the hill on the other side. And I started using some stairs, some trapdoors, and some slabs to make it look a little bit less blocky. Because Minecraft is a game of blocks, but I used it to make it smoothed out a little bit, make it look a bit more curved. And I did want to add a little thing on top, but it didn't look quite right, and so I got rid of it. And then I started filling in with glass here. It was a little bit funky for those side corners there, but I did just end up placing it like against these stair blocks. And then I realized in the back here I hadn't placed anything, and so I started to do the exact same thing from the front and just did that same flower box design and the same entrance design, but with the entrance having that one row of blocks underneath. And it was just, most of this is just a bunch of symmetry and copying over stuff. And I know symmetry can make a build look boring. I did make it look a bit asymmetrical with some vines later on. And then here I started working on the tricky part. I started working on the curve, and so I just copied it all to 4 sides and the front and back of the I was just working on how to make the glass not look odd, and so I just placed it. I don't really have a formula for this. It's just placing it so it doesn't look odd. It's just trial and error. And then the corners were the bit that were the hardest, and so I just placed it in like a curvy kind of pattern around the pillars and this in the blocks I had placed there. And then I started working on the inside. I originally wanted to do a wooden flooring, so here I'm laying down pillow and birch and stuff, but I didn't like it. So I ended up using World Edit just to replace the floor with a stone kind of thing. I didn't want to have to replace it all on stream because that would take me a few minutes, and so I just did the / replace near command because why not? It's easy. Oh, my cat is here. While I'm recording this voiceover, my cat decided to be here. I did make a small entrance part outside, and I did the command again just to replace the wood, and added a few stone buttons just to make the path look nice. And then I started building the planter boxes. I'm a little bit ahead of myself here, but I did start building the planter boxes. Yeah, here we are. And then I did some trapdoors to break up the shelves, and then over here, and I did some irrigation pathways. So where like a greenhouse has it, where like the water goes between the planters and stuff, I made it like that. I don't know if that makes sense or not, where it leads or anything, but I put water in there, and my idea is that somehow the water is connected to some kind of pump or something, and it's supplying all the plants and flowers and stuff with water. Again, I should have looked up a reference image to make sure it made sense, but trial and error. But it still looks really good. But making it look sense will make it just look better. And some stuff, it won't make sense and it'll still look amazing. So here I started replacing the bottom of it, because near like the stairs you could see the bottom of the planter boxes and it looked weird. And I did a bit of a moss and a grass pattern because doing too much moss, it always makes me feel like it's like too stark of a pattern. And so I added a little bit of grass for variation. I did some ferns, some bushes, and I did some white tulips, daisies, I think it's pronounced azure bluet, and some lily of the valleys. And so I wanted to add some veggies, but I didn't know any white veggies besides wheat, and wheat didn't exactly match. And so it was just a bunch of flowers. And then here I thought the center looked a bit boring, and so I made this kind of patch here. And so I added a couple of different types of grasses and that drip leaf and bush to make it look a little interesting. And then I started making a few pile of leaves, like bushes, and I did fill in the window boxes because I didn't. And I filled those in with some flowers and stuff. But I added the leaves so I knew where to start the vines that would cover the entire build. And I decided to do a gradient for leaves, and I usually don't do that. So, interesting. And so here I used azalea leaves and kind of made it like branching out, thinking of how the vines in real life would have curved around the building and stayed kind of close to the pillar area to stay on, because plants really can't grip to the glass. And then I started replacing it with some acacia leaves and then birch leaves towards the top. I usually don't do leaf grades, but I was kind of bored of the repetitive azalea pattern, and so I did some birch and acacia because I thought it would make a nice blend. And I think I should have switched the birch to the bottom and have it where the greener azalea was on top, but overall I think that was a good pick. And then I was just switching up some of the blocks here, and then I did fill in the flowers here. That's where I filled in the flowers. And then I did realize I had completely mirrored it. And then I placed some vines on the ceiling, partially because I wanted the particles, and also just to fill in the space with some greenery. I love the leaf falling particles, and I did replace it with the same gradient of acacia and birch leaves. And if you see in a few minutes, I did place some spore blossoms because I love the green particles. And I added a small tree in a jar because it added like a little plant. I added some shelves with some sea pickles. I think it's called a sea pickle. Some sea pickles and some pots. Because that space up there looked a bit empty, and so I just added shelves and stuff. And then I did start messing with the outside. I did add stone buttons on the floor. I started messing with the outside, added some moss and stuff to the area around it because it was looking very boring. And I just fixed it up a little bit, removed the block palette from the front. And here is the end result. Glad you liked it, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you on the stream and on the future video. Thank you, and goodbye.